All right, it's nice to see you all. How did the weekend go?
Good.
Good, good. Okay, good. And I'm excited to see how your first visual analyses went. Any just off the cuff feedback on that project so far?
My neighbor was waving at me the whole time while I was writing.
I'm sure. Well, you may need to let them know you're not a creeper, but if they've seen you around a while, they probably know that already. Good.
Yeah, he was laughing.
Okay, good, good. Anybody else?
I struggled a bit with like the descriptive visuals, like kind of like trying to move off just like basic descriptions to like more like complex. So I definitely still some work to be done on that for like the next like the real one.
Yeah, good. And we've got time, and we'll continue to do this in class. But I'm glad you're upfront about that, because I think that's the thing that happens with these early in the class. So good. Anybody else?
I just have weather problems. It's been thunderstorming here every day.
Okay. I can see how that will be an issue. Hopefully you're able to navigate around that. If not, just let me know and we'll figure out something else.
It's all good. Figured.
Okay, good. All right, so I sent out a couple of announcements yesterday. This first one doesn't pertain to you guys because you are, or y'all, because you're here. But for those of you who are listening to this recording later and you're doing the class asynchronously, please sign up for office hours. Okay, the second one does pertain to y'all. I want to walk us through some visual analyses pertaining to the protests that are going on. Hopefully you had some time to think about space and race, and we'll discuss that as we go through these images. I really look forward to your comments. We want this to be a collaborative, constructive conversation. And obviously a white woman, I don't claim any authority on this, but I do want to claim support and to do everything I can to help us think about racial equity as we're thinking about architecture and space and planning. Are you seeing just the image, or are you seeing the image plus my notes?
Just the image.
Okay, good. Thanks for that. Okay, so as mentioned, we're going to look at race, space, and equity. I want to do that through the images from the recent protests, but also a couple of key artists and their work that I want to bring to the fore. We'll do this for a little bit, and then we'll move toward group work on your analyses from the weekend. So first, we've seen anywhere you look on TV, Instagram, anywhere right now, we have a lot of unrest, a lot of anger, a lot of calls for justice, right, over the killing of George Floyd, and the greater issues of justice, safety, right to public space that are behind these. So just taking a minute with this first image, jot down just a couple of notes about what you see, what's taking place. Think about this not only in terms of what you understand socially and politically, but let's do this in a way that we're really analyzing the image in a similar way to what I had you do with the house. Like, what's happening in this image? Start thinking about those details, about looking at this as a photograph, as well as the importance of looking at it as a cultural and political moment. Okay, good. So what comes to mind as you look at this image?
I mean, it's not Minneapolis. I'm from Minneapolis. We don't have palm trees. So
Yeah. Okay.
Not here at all.
So it's not Minneapolis. Where is it? Other than the city, like, where is this action taking place?
On like a major street.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's in the street. What else do you see when you look at it?
I noticed a lot of protesters have their hands up, and my guess is that it's a still image, but my guess is it's probably the "hands up, don't shoot" chant that is often used at these protests. And so, yeah.
Right. So hands in the air, both as a mode of a call out, see me, I'm human, don't shoot. And then what else is happening with those hands?
I noticed that some people have fists instead of, raising their hands normally, which kind of means that they have strong values and they kind of bring aggression into the protest.
Yeah. Some strength, some resistance, right? Or some advocacy is coming through in that fist as well. Yeah, good. Okay, good. What else do you see when you look at this?
No,
No.
in Minneapolis, the wooden boards, they were using those to stop rubber bullets.
Yeah, excellent. So a blockade, right? And those boards are what are those boards?
Some of them look like doors.
Yeah, doors, plywood, materials that would generally be used in construction, right? So it's a very physical barrier for the rubber bullets that are coming at them. And we can also think about this in terms of like, this is a makeshift, an impromptu or an in situ mode of creating physical shelter where there isn't emotional and physical safety, right? So using these materials that we generally think of like to prop up our homes, to give us an idea of a roof over our heads and things, these materials have been mobilized in a different way. And what does that say? Like if we probe that even further, thinking about those materials out in the street, what else does that bring to mind?
I kind of wonder about the origin of the materials. Like they don't seem to be like in a place you would find them. So who brought them there? How'd they get there?
Yeah.
Question I have.
Yeah. Some sort of reuse. Where did they come from? Exactly. The other reference that's there that I'm seeing, you can tell me if this rings true or false for you, is that immediately thinking about these domestic materials or materials used to make home spaces, it calls to mind too that it's not just in the streets that these bodies are vulnerable, these people are vulnerable. We've seen time after time, police squads breaking into homes as if they were also public space, as if they were something violable that for, let's say, myself or any other privileged white family, right? We think about doors as saying like, you do not come in the door, right? That's mine, you don't come in. But putting them out in the streets like this, we see a real different resonance about that relationship to architecture, relationship to home. What else do you see when you look at it?
I think for me, it's really important to note in this protest and protests in general that we've seen the close proximity of people considering the pandemic and how they're so involved in this movement and care about it so deeply that they're willing to put their own personal safety and health at risk in order to join these movements and fight for their rights and against racism.
Yeah, Sophie, good work. That's the thing, right? For months now, when we've seen images of streets, they are empty. There is no one in them. And it's such a stark contrast. In addition to that, just close proximity to, right, we see all the masks that marks this as a very different time than other protests before this, even though the protest, the act of being in the streets, as so many people have made clear, like this happens way too many times. It's happened for centuries over and over, right? But we have a marker of repetition and then a marker of difference in there. Good. Anything else in this one that comes up?
It is not just Black people protesting, but I feel like it's mixed races because
Yeah.
I kind of noticed there's, other ethnicities.
Yeah, exactly. We see a wide range, a diverse group of people, even in the framing by the photographer, right? They could have taken that picture from any spot, but they took this picture where we have a variety of people right up in the front whose backgrounds are varied. We have a variety of people in these images. It's just as you said, it's a diverse group of people out there protesting. Anything else come to mind just from the photography standpoint?
It's at an angle, like the photographer went like lower, and so you're kind of like looking up at the protesters, and it kind of like creates this contrast. I think it's pretty interesting versus like looking down or looking at eye level.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. What does that angle do for us as viewers?
I feel like it gives the protesters like more agency and like power to like kind of display what they're fighting for versus like an over the top view would probably be like less powerful versus you have like these like multiple layers and you like see like the close faces in the front and then like kind of how it goes deeper in the back and you can't see everything but you like imagine that it's packed for like a mile or so.
Yep, excellent. Rosie, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was going to say kind of the same thing. Having the viewpoint where it's kind of tilted upwards kind of shows their power and the movement together. And rather than if it was down, it would just kind of like almost be looking down. But I think it's powerful how it's tilted upwards to kind of show the importance of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly with these two figures, these two men who are front and center, right? They are filling, because of the angle, they're filling almost the entire height of the image. And that gives us just an intuitive understanding. One, we're sort of, as a viewer, we're in there with them as we look. We aren't, it's not a hierarchical camera lens viewpoint. Everything that you just said, good work. Good. Anything about the sky? This is really subtle. But if you were a photographer and you were looking through all the images you took this day, something in the sky, the way the clouds are shaped, what's going on, might stand out as like, oh, this is a good image. Do you have a sort of intuitive sense about what that might be?
It looks like it almost makes it seem like her fist is like or something. Like it looks like it's kind of like the clouds are kind of like radiating from it almost.
Yeah, excellent, Brad. That's exactly right. So it's just a coincidental alignment, but as a photographer, you can choose your moment to show, right? And we've got this great sort of energetic cloud dispersal here. We also have this, airplane situation where really the sky itself is in motion. It gives more energy to the photo rather than a static image. Good. Good. And these are all the things that play into how the public reads what the photographer is recording. Anything else on this one before I move forward? Okay. All right, now what about this one? Take a minute, just think through all the details. Okay, what comes to mind with these? Yeah, Bayvon.
I feel like it's pretty interesting that the car is in the front, but the peoples are at the back. But the main focus is like the peoples at the back. So it stressed a kind of like I don't know, stressful situation, and also focus on the movement of like the motion of like the crowds.
Yeah.
Like people are, it can show kind of like fear and anger from the picture. Like people just like move around and running, and it's kind of like in the road is kind of messy. So
Yeah, great read. In the early part of what you were describing, you know, we've got this truck, but it is blurred out. It's in the front of the image. Generally, something in the foreground, in that front of the image, which is called the foreground, would be clearer. Generally, the things closest to us we see more clearly, but using lens techniques, that big truck is blurred out, and it's the people that are in focus, as you picked up on. And it feels, I can't remember exactly what your word was, it feels panicked, and also there was something maybe
fears and angers.
Yeah, fear and anger, and there was something you said it like as if they were kind of stuck. I could be wrong.
I forgot. Sorry.
Fair enough. But what's happening to give us that read on those people? What's happening in the layering of the photograph? Yeah, Lucas.
I mean, from they're all focused on the truck. Nobody's looking really anywhere else. Everyone's staring at the truck, and then the people in the front, they're running away from it. So even though it's a still, it almost gives the impression that the truck is headed towards the crowd.
Yeah, absolutely. We have the energy and motion in the bodies. Ellen, go ahead.
Something I noticed was there's a lot of like water bottles, and looks like there's also a backpack and a reusable water bottle on the ground.
Yeah.
Which makes me think that they saw the truck and they dropped everything and started running.
Yeah, absolutely. And that like discarded remainder of things, you know, they needed for the day. They weren't carrying more than what they needed, I'm sure. Those are left behind immediately. Yeah, great. The other thing that's happening in the photograph, again, thinking from the photographer's point of view, we have this truck in the left foreground. We have the people who are in the middle, basically, of the photograph, who have become the objects of interest, the subjects of interest. And then behind that, the way this photograph is framed, you know, we have this layer of trees and houses. We don't get the sense that there's a place for these people to run to, right? Certainly there's probably a street behind, but the way this photograph is working, these people are, it reinforces for us how trapped they were as that truck drove forward. You know, even if there's a place to run, there are going to be, you know, at least hundreds of people behind them, if not thousands, to go to. What else stands out in this image? Let's read it now, like metaphorically, what's going on.
The crowd kind of looks like it is escalated, like there's different levels.
Yeah.
It goes from bottom up really high. Yep. Especially the people near the pool.
Yeah, absolutely. They are elevated in a way. The crowd is now multidimensional. Yeah, good. What else? Yeah, Sophie.
I think it's really interesting how the one man in the front looks like he's running a different direction than the rest of the crowd. He's kind of singled out and is more in the middle. So I would just kind of be curious as to whether maybe he was going for that backpack that he left behind, or if there was another reason that he chose to run a different direction from the crowd.
Yep. He stands out in that motion, like you're saying, which also brings his sign into attention, even though it's still fuzzy. It's not super clear. It brings it to attention. Yeah, good. What else? Yeah, Matthew.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, like kind of how I look at this photo is like it kind of in the front, it's like the driver of like what's about to be chaos. So like the truck is kind of like the driver of chaos, and then it's like slowly reaching back deeper into the crowd, because you can see the people in the front are like really like trying to run away instantly, but it hasn't registered yet with the people
Yeah.
further back, and kind of
Yeah.
like how, you know, this it kind of is representative of like how something spreads. Like you see like this force, and then like the people near it like start. It's almost like representative of like all these cities that have slowly started to protest, where there's this, you know, there's this instance, like this incident, and then it started in Minneapolis, and, you know, now it's spread to like 100, you know, like so many cities. So
Yeah, excellent, excellent. We have this sort of huge, powerful thing moving at a group of people, and then this dispersal. Just it was a great illustration. What happened is it spread across the U.S. as it spreads to various people who are coming together in solidarity. Good. Any alternate readings? Any other ways of thinking about it? Christina, did you ever?
Yeah, I agree with Matthew. I also think it's kind of hard to wrap your head around this image, because I know I was kind of confused looking at it at first and I couldn't figure out why. But I think we generally see trucks and cars on the highway or places, you know, driving freely where we know they're not going to hit anything. Like trucks and cars aren't generally supposed to run into things. And this looks like it's intentionally going towards this huge crowd of people that are vulnerable and unable to seemingly escape. So that causes also tension that is kind of subtle, but definitely there.
Right. Well done. Really well done, Christina. Rosie?
Yeah, and similarly, so how they're trapped by the truck is similar to how like maybe these people could also be trapped by metaphorically police brutality and racism. So like the physical like trap sense of feeling you see in this photo can connect to like the deeper level of like how these people are actually feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. Great read. Really great read. We could see this truck as institutional racism, as personal racism, as power structures, police brutality, anything that's just like huge and makes these populations vulnerable in front of it. In addition to being this horrifying thing where an actual unreal truck was going to run into, and a driver were going to run into a crowd of people. Yeah, good work. Anything else on this image? No? Okay. Okay, take a minute with this one. Okay, good. What's happening here?
I mean, what I notice is it seems to be a little bit darker, probably towards dusk, which means it was probably after curfew. That's what a lot of the cities have been doing, is setting curfews and saying you're not allowed out. I know for here it was 8 p.m.
Yeah, good observation.
And then if you were driving on the road at that time, everybody got like ripped out of their cars, literally. The police would like basically run up to your car and either break your windows, slash your tire, or pull you out.
Yeah. It's so hard to see these things, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I noticed is towards the left of the photo, there's some gas. They were using tons of tear gas, and all of the police have masks on with goggles.
Right.
So my guess is that's tear gas.
Yeah. Good read.
I definitely noticed the girl on the ground in the middle. She looks terrified.
Yeah.
She's even covering her ears.
Yeah. Yep. That's a really good observation, because something's happening that we can't see visually that needs, ear and audio protection. Good. What else?
For me, the photo is like kind of divided both racially as well as like down the midline. On the left, you have the 4 like white police officers, and then the Black people in the car. And I feel like the first thing that I noticed was the imbalance of like the weapons they're using / what resources they have available to them in order to fight the opposite side, quote unquote, of this battle. And the police officers are fully armed and have all this equipment and are wearing masks, while the people in the car have their phones in their hands and basically nothing else.
Yep, exactly. Great juxtaposition in terms of weaponry and protection. Really good read.
Which could probably also go further to talk about, you know, privilege and how white people sometimes have more resources available to them and all that stuff as well.
Yeah, access, socioeconomic and power and otherwise. Yeah, good. Matthew.
I also think if you like look kind of deeper into the background, you see like this like smaller group of people that's observing what's happening. And like, just like the people in the car, they kind of seem helpless in like their inability to, you know, come to the aid of these people, because there's almost this line of like policemen between like the people that are watching it and the people that are like currently like suffering what seems to be like police brutality for like no apparent reason. Like I'm like really curious what has happened in this photo to cause like this display of force. It does
and it's something that we don't know. We can read the circumstances that we know about curfew, about people being taken from their cars, about tear gas, all these different things. But you do wonder, okay, this is a diverse group of women in that car. Looks like possibly Black, Latina, otherwise women. And then we have a group of armed men standing outside. That like traditional juxtaposition seems a little when the world is happening. And then as you pointed out, like some are standing, some are on the ground or getting as low as they can. You begin to read those dynamics, and we would want to know the story, what happened. What does the car call up for you? Anything?
The fact that they are being taken out of the car means that they are being taken out of their safety in a way.
Yeah, it's a protective layer for them, right? It's metal. It's almost armored in its own way, but with those open doors, they are vulnerable. They've been taken from that safety. Good. What else about cars, if anything? One thing we know is that there is a disproportionately high amount of traffic stops of things like your tail lights out, your brake lights not working, all of these different things that happen to people of color, communities of color, that don't happen proportionally to white communities, right? There's something about that car that could be armored protection, could be safety. It's often a place of confrontation between communities and the police. Good. Anything else on this image? Yeah, Sylvie.
I think it's really interesting how the one police officer on the left, it almost looks like he's staring directly into the camera and has his like weapon ready. So I think that's also a commentary a lot of how social media and the use of phones with video and photo has impacted this whole movement, and how the whole world has been able to see what's kind of happening through the lens of people that are actually there, whereas we wouldn't be able to see this image likely if it weren't for cameras and things like that we have available now.
Right. That's been a really important discourse this week, hasn't it? It's not that racism's gotten worse, it's just gotten more visible. It's just become more visible. And more visible to certain people, right? It's always been visible to the populations who are targeted. And for others, we're just learning how to look, right? Good. Okay, and you already touched on this point earlier, but what comes up in the juxtaposition of these two images?
The first thing I notice is the color contrast. Like the left picture is very dark.
Yeah.
It's probably a night in the city, and whereas the other one in the right is very white and clean, and it just brings out, bright feelings and everything.
Yeah, great observation. What else?
Another thing is that the left picture is protesting with aggression and like physical protestation, whereas the other one is just words that like saying Black Lives Matter is another form of protesting.
Yeah, exactly. We have these two different ways of doing this. One is a street manifestation, a street march, to really get historically the idea of the march is like, see us, we are people, we are out here, and there are many of us experiencing this, right? At the same time, in this bizarre period of stay-at-home orders and the pandemic, we see in the image on the right a mode of support, a mode of participation that is different, as you said, right? It's a textual mode. It's written. It's typed. There's a body there, but the body is almost secondary to what's happening on the windows, right? And you brought this up earlier. There is this vulnerability for the populations who are out in the streets, and here we really see that distinction. The people who have the privilege to stay at home, to work at home, to be in a safe home. Not all homes are safe for people. Not all homes are a place of rest or sanctity in a way. And then you have people who don't have that ability or do have that ability and are choosing to give that privilege up to go out and support and resist in important ways. Both valid right now, just very different.
I think it's interesting to see a giant group of people versus an individual, where the group, it might be more like safety in numbers, where somebody chooses the safety of their home, but it still kind of emphasizes the importance of each individual still needs to do their part. And that person is choosing to do their part in a different way, but still doing their part.
Nice read. That safety in numbers is a really good point. Juxtapositions of safeties. Good. Anything else on this? Yeah, Matthew.
You can clearly tell that in the right photo that the signs are kind of hand drawn, most likely with materials they had available at the time. Like they probably didn't go out and buy things to then go make these signs. So you kind of it's taking it upon yourself to make a point with like what you can do. And like they chose to because of the pandemic, and I think this is in New York City, so a lot of high risk there, and then they kind of chose to take what they had and try to send a message.
Yep. And we've seen a lot of this. Window front support coming out of New York City, right? For all the healthcare workers, these daily hours of cheering and supporting the people who are at the forefront. It's a move from one mode of support to another for issues that are pressing right now. Good. Okay. Shifting gears just a little bit. I love this project by Joanna Shomali. She's an artist from the Ivory Coast. And this image, tell me what we're looking at.
Kind of says in the caption, but it looks like it's a photo that she took of, daily life and then embroidered the bright color stitches over it into the material.
Yeah, great, absolutely. And what's the scene? What's happening? Gabby, any thoughts on this one?
It kind of looks like the man might be just staring out into the street, seeing what's happening. Like, I don't think he has intention to cross the street or anything.
Yeah, good point. Nice. Yep. There's a hesitance, right? Or at least a thoughtfulness in his approach to the street. Yeah, good. else? What's happening with the different colors of the embroidery?
I feel like the yellow color around the man is emphasizing his figure in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. It draws us to him with the choice of color and the shape. Good. What else?
Yeah, as you travel away from him, the colors get darker down the palette, and it may even like size like his influence on his surroundings or something, and how it's sort of being drained away on either side.
Yeah, nice. So color is being used in a very conscious manner, right? To give us focus here, and then a little less, he's got a little less influence, or to Gabby's point, he's a little less ability to see that far. So this project was done, as you can see, in March of 2016, and it was after a terrorist attack in this town. And so knowing that, just a little bit of the history behind the piece, we can see this man's wariness as he comes out into the street. He is, you can imagine him worrying about his own safety as he goes out, trying to check out what are the conditions today, different from what they might have been any other day. Does anybody want to speak how this may or may not relate to the protest images we've been looking at?
I mean, I know for me, leaving my house every day, it's a different city, literally.
Yeah.
Things have been burned down. Our skies are black with just smoke and crap, and then people have been like shoveling ash all day.
Yeah.
It's a war zone. No other way to put it. It's a war zone.
Yeah. Anything else on this? So in a way, the artist is just using these tiny little bits of embroidery. If you've ever stitched anything, these are just little bitty needle points up and down on this image to make more visceral the emotion and the experience of being in these spaces. We can imagine if you took these protest images and someone did this sort of work, the different ways that we would be able to see or empathize or gain just a little bit of insight into what's happening there. Sometimes it relates to who the figures are and what they're feeling, and sometimes it relates more to what the artist is feeling, right? Maybe the artist has this wariness, maybe the artist has this nervousness. So there are multiple ways to read these images. Good. Take a minute with this one. Okay, what stands out when you look at this image?
It's interesting how there's pictures that involve Black lives and their race and everything patched all over the picture.
Yeah. Tell me
Like
where you're
not
seeing those, just so it's work. Go ahead.
only the wall, but the windows and the floor and part of the clothes. It's quite intriguing.
Yeah, great. What's going on with those photos? What's the artist trying to do with all of that? Yeah, Matthew.
To me, it seems like it's kind of the artists are trying to highlight that these people kind of have to live with all of these events like in their everyday life, versus someone who has privilege maybe like doesn't have to think of all these things every day, and it's kind of like puts a stress on them. Most of them are looking down in the image. So.
So it puts them in a context, whether we know what's happening in those images or not. Right there is as you're saying, that context is embedded in who they are, and they're embedded in that context. And whether those are historical wrongs or family photos or pictures of their community, each of those things, like, it is part of who they are, right? Good. What else about this image? Sophie.
I think it's really interesting that the two people whose clothes are kind of made up of the same picture collage seem to be the people that are maybe in their like young 20s or 30s. So they're kind of the people who are taking this issue head on at the moment. And they're the ones who are really out there protesting and trying to make a change and get recognition for their race and equality.
Yeah. So there's a point of youth in here, right? That's really important, and what role those figures play, what role those people play, and their involvement and their engagement. Yeah, good. Just on a banal level, where is this taking place? What are we seeing? What are we looking into or looking at? What's the backdrop for this scene? Ellen?
It looks like they're gathered for like a family gathering.
Yeah.
In the back, the woman in the orange shirt looks like she could be preparing something like maybe food, and like 2 people or 3 people are holding beverages, so maybe like a Sunday lunch or dinner type thing.
Yeah. In a way, it's a very domestic scene, right? These figures are sitting on a sort of couch or 2 chairs grouped together. We have this kind of table with food, just an everyday, could be an everyday, or it could be, like you said, could be a family gathering, could be a weekend afternoon where everyone's come together. So that interior image of a Black family, an extended Black family in some way, right? Because we see multiple adults, multiple kids, all gathered together. How often do we see this type of image? When you think about or see domestic artwork or artwork focusing on domestic space, who do we usually see in those images? Who don't we see in those images? Yeah, Ellen.
I feel like normally when we see like an image of a family, it's like the typical like white, like nuclear, like two kids, white picket fence type deal.
Yeah. So long historically, art history, for example, has focused on, elite images or images of elite families, tiny nuclear families, or let's say in the colonial period, we would have seen plantation owners pictured, or we don't have a lot of celebration of all of the fantastic work by artists of color featuring people of color in their everyday lives. When we see images, especially right now, we're seeing people for good reason out in the streets in protest. And we, at the same time, we don't, as a culture, right, have a strong image of family life for people of color, or domestic space for people of color. And just that simple seeing people every day in their spaces, it's a way of training ourselves for understanding, right? There are humans out there, they're doing the same things, or they're doing different things than we are, but they are gathering together. They have people they love. They have histories that make them who they are. It's a simple thing, but works like this are so important because they are doing something novel that shouldn't have to be novel. Right? Okay, good work. So one last image, which is Crosby's work as well. It's a beautiful collage piece, doing the same thing, just a woman in contemplation at a table. And again, we see the shadows on the floor, like history, people who mean something to her. It's just a great, vivid image of the multi-layered selves that all humans have. Okay. You guys were great in conversation on this. Thank you so much for your contributions and your thoughts. What we're doing with art today, I know this is an architecture class, but sometimes it's easier to ease yourself into reading things carefully when it's an image. You know, we can learn to look for detail, we can learn to look for nuance, and then think about metaphor after we've done that core work of picking out exactly what we're seeing technically. With an image, easier than with a building. So we'll just keep practicing this to warm up to three-dimensional objects. But for right now, let's focus on your three-dimensional objects, your houses that you worked on. I'm going to put you into breakout rooms. You're going to spend the time, again, reading each of you will read your visual analysis to the other one or two people in your group. As you are listening, the other two people in the group should be drawing, figuring out what they're describing and trying to make a drawing. Now, let's be clear, I will be amazed if anyone's drawings come out like the building in question. So no pressure on this, have fun with it, just take it as an exercise of how this works so that you can improve for coming times, okay? Each of you should have a drawing by the end, and each of you should have a little bit of feedback for one another, constructive feedback. Like, it would have been helpful if I knew the colors of this, this, and this. Or it would be great if you talked about the shape of the overall house before going into the detail, or however it is, just so that everyone can learn from this and move forward with positive feedback. Any questions? Then when you get your notes done, you don't have to type them up. If you are already typing them, that's great. If you are drawing and handwriting these little notes, just snap a picture. And then I think, do I have you uploading those or emailing them? Just follow the instructions there on how to get that material to me afterwards. Okay, here goes. Let me stop sharing here. Okay, for those of you who are doing this class asynchronously, if you will work through the images that we move through at the top of the class, give me some feedback on what you see, what you think, your contributions to that discussion. And then for this collaborative assignment, we'll do it together in the office hours that you guys are responding to through that doodle poll that I sent out. Once we get a date and time for those that everyone can meet, we'll do the same breakout project where you guys can discuss your analyses with each other and get some feedback on how to improve before your next graded assignment. Okay, thanks, take care.